Hello guys and welcome to Quipoin. So in the last video we discussed about the overview of CSS. We saw the introduction to CSS. Now in this video we are going to start the basic syntax of CSS. So without any further delay, hit that like button, subscribe to Quipoin and let's get started. Now after learning about the overview of the CSS, you may have understood why the CSS is important. Now, as you have understood it's important, it's time to take our first step toward the CSS and learn its syntax. I have written here what we are going to cover today. The first thing is CSS syntax. We are going to cover it. And the second thing that we are going to cover is the types of CSS. Now, for writing a CSS syntax, there are few set of rules. First of all, there are three things. The first thing is selector. The second thing is properties. And the third thing is values. Now, what is this selector, properties, and values? Selector is to what I want to add my style to is the selector. That means to whichever element I want my CSS to be applied is the selector. For example, if I want to add the style or CSS to my body, so my body will be the selector in that case. Again, if I want to add style to my form, so the form will be the selector in that case. Again, if I want to add style to heading, so heading will be selector in that case. So whatever tag you want to add style to is a selector. Now comes the second part, that is the property. Property is nothing but the attribute of the tag or element. Again, property is nothing but the attribute of the tag or element. In CSS case, the properties become the attribute of the selector. Whatever thing you are selecting, the property of that or the attribute of that is property. For example, I have selected here, I have selected body as a selector. Now, what are the attributes of the body? There will be a background color. There will be a background color. Okay. Then there will be simply a text color. Then there can be a font family. Then there can be alignment. Okay. So these are the properties or attribute of the body. Okay. So these are the properties. Okay. The properties of selector is basically a property. Now, the third thing is what is a value? The amount or what thing you add to the property, what you say your property to be like is the value. For example, if I say background color, so what can be the values of background color? It will be a color. Okay, it can be a black color or a red color. So these are the values that you can input in background color. Similar to the color, okay, if you want to add values to the color, so it will be again some color only, like green or orange. Okay, and okay, so these are the values to the property. Font family can be your Arial. Okay, alignment can be your center. So these are the values that you can input in the properties of the selector. So this is how you write a CSS. Now, how to write it? But we are still confused how to write it. So there is a structure to it. What is that structure? First comes the selector. So first comes the selector. Okay, whatever you want to add your styles to comes first, selector. Then you add a declaration box. what is this declaration box? This declaration box is nothing but it tells or it contains the property and value. Okay. Then comes the properties of the selector. The properties of the selector. Then comes in front of the properties, you write the values that you have to enter in that property. So this is a basic syntax of, you can say, CSS. If you want to add multiple selector, you can do that. Okay, you can add again a selector 2, and you can add again properties and values. Okay, so this is how you basically write your basic CSS syntax. And if you can also add multiple properties, okay, you can also add multiple properties to the selector. For example, this is my property 1 and this is my value 1. Okay, and I'll just give a semicolon, I'll control C, and I'll just paste it. Okay, like let's add 3 values. So what you are going to do is you are going to add 2, and then you are going to add 2, and then 3, and here I'll just write 3, and there is a typo, I'll correct that too. Property and property. So this is how you write a basic CSS. You have learned about the basic syntax of CSS. Let's implement it. Okay, let's implement it. But before implementing that, okay, before implementing it, let's learn about types of CSS. This is most important thing that has to be done now. There are 3 types of CSS. Okay, the first is inline, second is internal, and the third is external CSS. Again, there are 3 types of CSS. The first is inline CSS, the second is internal CSS, and the third is external CSS. In the previous video, I mentioned something about inline CSS and internal CSS. Let's deep dive into that details. What is a inline CSS? Okay, I'll just write something here. H1, H1, welcome, and P, Quipoin. Okay, let's open up live server. So I have basically written, okay, let's comment it out, or it would be a bit frustrating. Okay, so we have commented it out. Now I have created a body with a heading and a paragraph, welcome and welcome Quipoin. Now what is inline CSS? As the name suggests, okay, when you use the style attribute of a particular tag, that is a inline CSS. Whenever you use style attribute of a tag, it is inline CSS. See, it is a selector, okay, then comes the property, and then comes the value. It is valid, still it is valid. First comes the selector, then comes the property, that is background color, and then comes the value. Here the selectors are H1 and P tag, the properties are background color, and the properties are blue and aquamarine. So this is how you write a inline CSS, and this is what a inline CSS means. It's so hectic to write each and everything in one line. Okay, so I'm just going to remove it. And if you recall of the HTML series, we used a tag, or we learned about a tag called style tag. Now, what is this style tag? We learned that this style tag helps in giving or helps in styling the web page. So, style tag is basically a CSS, but instead of writing it beside a tag or with a tag, we are just implementing it in a head. So, this is internal CSS. Again, when you use style tag inside a head to style your web page, it is an internal CSS. So if I write h1, which is my selector, then I'll give a block. Then I'll write property. Property, for example, I wrote a color, and my color should be blue. Okay. And then I'll again select P, it is my selector. I'll give declaration box. I'll write a property called background color, and I'll give it a color aquamarine. So you can see exact same output came. Rather than writing it inside the tag, I have used style tag in the head, and I wrote each and everything in a single format, and it still got implemented. So this is internal CSS. Simple as that. Okay. Now, what is external CSS? External CSS, as the name suggests, when you make an external style sheet file and you link that file to the reference to your current HTML, then it is an external file. For example, if I create, let's say, a CSS file, for example, style, and you know the extension of CSS file, that is .css. So your style sheet will be created. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take it, Control X, and I'll remove the style tag, and I'll open my style.css and I'll just paste it here. Okay, I'll just paste it here. So what I did, instead of using a style tag inside a head, I created a style sheet named style.css, and I pasted whatever style I want to give to my HTML file here. Okay, how to connect this style sheet to my current HTML? If you recall the previous HTML videos, we learned about a tag called link tag. Okay, so what this link tag do is basically it links an external sheet to your current HTML. So if I give a link, and then if I give a value style sheet, and okay, style sheet, and if I give it a reference, okay, I'll give it a reference, and I'll just copy paste its path. Okay, I'll just copy paste it path. Okay, style sheet. So as soon as I linked my style sheet, my external style sheet, to this HTML page, it implemented the style sheet. Okay, so this is the external CSS. I hope you understood today's tutorial. I hope you understood the basic syntax of the CSS and the types of CSS. If you still have any query, you can come to the tutorial and you can read all the tutorial that we have uploaded here in the CSS tutorial. And still, if you have a further question, you can just go to the Let's Discuss forum. You can add your question here and we will be answering all your questions. In the next video, we are going to discuss about the margin, outline, padding of the CSS, and we are going to discuss furthermore, and we will dive furthermore into the CSS. So hit that like button and subscribe to Quipoin for getting such updates from Quipoin. And thank you for watching this video. I hope you understood it all, and thank you.